The Empire's capital was a city of glass and steel, a monument to the grandeur of their achievements. Towering skyscrapers stretched high into the sky, their metallic surfaces shimmering in the glow of artificial suns. The vast fleets of the Empire, sleek and invincible, orbited overhead, maintaining an unbreakable hold on the stars. The alien race that ruled here, a species known as the Virok, were the unquestioned masters of the galaxy. For centuries, their expansion had been unstoppable. Worlds fell beneath their heel, their technologies far surpassing anything the universe had ever seen. But even in this golden age of their reign, a single name haunted their leaders, whispered in dark corners and secret chambers: humans. It was a name the Virok tried to forget, but could not. It had been centuries since they first encountered Earth, and despite the crushing defeats they inflicted upon countless races, humanity remained a constant source of unease. The first contact between the Empire and humans had been one of diplomacy, at least at first. The Virok had assumed that, like all the other species they encountered, humanity would bow to their superior technology and join their expansive empire. But that assumption had proven to be a fatal miscalculation. Humans were different. They didn't bend, didn't yield, and they certainly didn't fall. The First War had been short, but brutal. The Empire had deployed fleets designed to eradicate entire populations, only to find that humanity was resourceful in ways no one could predict. Every strike the Empire landed was met with swift retaliation, and for the first time, the Virok had to retreat. Earth had survived, and in the wake of that war, the Virok had learned to fear the one species that could challenge them, not because of their technology, but because of their sheer, unbreakable will to survive. Now, in the command center of the Empire's fleet, the Virok High Command stood around a massive holographic map of the galaxy. Their most trusted generals, commanders of the vast war machines that conquered star systems with ease, gathered in tense silence. Is it a mistake, then? General Kale, one of the Empire's most seasoned strategists, asked, his voice low. Or have they truly returned? He was speaking of the message, the one that had come from the human colony on the fringe of the galaxy, a place they'd long thought forgotten, abandoned by humanity, and left to fade into obscurity. The message was simple: we've returned. You've underestimated us. At first it was dismissed as a prank, a remnant of a dead civilization clinging to the past. But it was the encryption that made them pause. This was no accidental transmission. It was deliberate, calculated. Whoever had sent it had intentionally reached out, and they were clearly more organized than the Empire had anticipated. Cal's gaze hardened as he stared at the map. He knew this was no trivial matter. The human race had always been a wild card, and they had never truly disappeared. Their technology may not have matched the Empire's, but it was the human mind, the stubborn, relentless determination, that made them unpredictable. And that was something the Empire could not control. "We will go," High Commander Solon announced. His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp, betraying a flicker of concern. "We'll find out what this truly means." The Empire's most feared warships were ordered to mobilize, an armada so vast that entire star systems quivered in its wake. Yet, even as the fleet prepared to depart, a single question lingered in the minds of all present. What if the humans weren't as weak as they thought? The Virok High Command had acted swiftly, and within days, a fleet of elite warships was dispatched to investigate the mysterious transmission. As the ships powered through the stars, their massive engines igniting the void around them, there was a sense of unease hanging in the air. These ships were the pride of the Empire. Constructed from alloys that could resist the harshest of space battles, outfitted with weapons capable of obliterating entire planets, they were designed for one purpose: to bring any defiant world to its knees. But humanity was different. The fleet arrived at the coordinates of the signal, a distant planet at the farthest reaches of the Empire's known space. On their approach, the planet appeared much like any other human world: rough terrain, oceans, and sprawling landmasses. Nothing seemed out of place at first, But as the ships entered the planet's orbit, something unexpected happened. The planet, once visible on the ship's sensors, suddenly vanished. Gone. The fleet's captain, Admiral Lothar, cursed under his breath as he glanced at the readouts. Where did it go? He muttered. The sensors showed nothing. No ships, no atmosphere, just a void where a planet should be. A few moments later, the planet reappeared, surrounded by a strange, shimmering energy field. It was as if the very laws of space were bending around it, warping the reality that the Virak ships had relied on for centuries. This was no ordinary defensive shield. It was something far more advanced, something that had been concealed from the Empire. "We've been detected," Admiral Lothar said, his voice tight with unease. "Deploy recon drones. We need to know what's happening down there." The drones were dispatched, but their return was delayed. The energy field around the planet interfered with their communication, distorting their images and scrambling their transmissions. But through the glitching feed, the Admiral caught a glimpse of something disturbing, a network of massive hidden structures deep beneath the planet's surface. The human colony wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, and it was hiding something. Then suddenly, the transmission went black. Lothar stood frozen, the hum of the ship's engine the only sound filling the command deck. He knew something was terribly wrong. There was no way a primitive colony could possess this kind of technology, especially after centuries of isolation. These humans had been forgotten by the Empire, abandoned, left to rot on the fringe of the galaxy. And yet, they had clearly prepared for this moment, for the very return of the Empire they had once fought. His mind raced with possibilities. Was this all part of some grand plan? Were the humans luring them into a trap? "We are not alone," Lothar said, his voice steady, but filled with a growing sense of foreboding. "I want all fleets in position. No one engages until we have answers." As the fleet slowly circled the mysterious world, every officer on board could feel it. A strange, unsettling shift in the air. The Empire, for the first time in centuries, was on the defensive. The Virak had conquered countless species, obliterated entire civilizations, but this was something new. The humans had returned, and now, the Virak were about to learn that the past they thought buried was anything but forgotten. As the Empire's fleet remained in orbit, tensions soared within the command ships. Admiral Lothar paced the deck of the flagship, his sharp eyes scanning the data streams as they tried to decipher the enigma surrounding the human world. Every piece of information felt like a puzzle with half the pieces missing. The energy field around the planet was unlike anything the Virak had encountered. Even their most advanced scanning technologies were being thwarted, but beneath the unease, something more unsettling lingered. This was no accident. There was no question now that the humans had prepared for this moment, and the Empire had missed it. The old myths about humanity's resilience were more than just tales. They were warnings. Inside the vast depths of the Empire's intelligence archives, an urgent order was issued. Retrieve all historical data on humans. The past was about to reveal its hidden truths. In the Empire's grand archives, buried beneath layers of security, a team of analysts scored ancient documents and long-forgotten records. Among these was a detailed account of the early days of the Empire's expansion into human space. It began innocuously. Diplomatic exchanges with the newly discovered Earth, a species eager for advancement, eager to trade. But the peaceful overtures were short-lived. A tense peace meeting between Virak and humans had escalated into violence after a single unprovoked strike from a human vessel, a signal that humanity would not bow, would not submit. The humans had refused to join the Empire, refusing even to recognize their authority. The Virak had been baffled. After all, they had never known a species to resist the Empire's will. They had anticipated eventual submission, but instead, humanity fought back with a tenacity that confounded them. The records revealed something far darker than a simple refusal to submit. The humans had learned from their defeats. After the first few crushing defeats, they didn't just lick their wounds. They adapted. They created guerrilla tactics, reverse-engineered technology, and found ways to exploit the weaknesses the Empire had overlooked. The war wasn't won by superior technology or vast fleets. It was won through sheer resourcefulness and an unyielding will to survive. The most unsettling detail in the records was the Reclamation Protocol, a secret human strategy developed in the wake of their defeats. The protocol outlined the process by which humans would, at all costs, maintain their autonomy, even if it meant losing their colonies or entire star systems. But it was more than a defense strategy. It was a promise, passed down through generations. If the Empire ever returned, humanity would be ready. And so, hidden deep within the ruins of forgotten colonies and decaying worlds, humanity had been silently preparing for the day the Empire would return. Their strength was not in their technology alone, but in their resolve, their ability to outthink, outmaneuver, and adapt. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity refused to be crushed, much to the dismay of the Virok, who underestimated the human spirit. Admiral Lothar read through the data with a growing sense of horror. He thought back to the strange energy field that had surrounded the human world. It wasn't just a shield. It was something more. A precaution. A safeguard humanity had placed over their colonies to protect themselves from exactly what was happening now. The Empire's return. The realization hit hard. This was no simple colony. What the Empire faced now was the result of centuries of human ingenuity and resilience, an untapped potential that had only grown stronger with time. Humanity had been waiting for this moment. Lothar closed his eyes and clenched his fists. There would be no quick victory here. The Virok Empire's greatest weapon had always been its ability to crush its enemies with overwhelming force. But humanity had learned how to fight back, how to make that force its own downfall. And now, the Empire would learn what it truly meant to face an enemy they couldn't simply destroy. Admiral Lothar's mind raced as the final pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. Humanity had never truly disappeared. The records from the Empire's ancient archives had revealed an unsettling truth. After the war, humanity had scattered into the farthest corners of the galaxy, surviving in isolated colonies. But these were no helpless outposts, as the Empire had believed. They were hidden fortresses, each one carefully prepared to resist the Empire's inevitable return. And now, they were about to make their presence known. Lothar stared at the holographic map in front of him. The mysterious energy field had concealed the location of the human world they had come to investigate, but that was only the beginning. As his fleet prepared to make contact with the planet, an encrypted transmission came through, an alert from the farthest reaches of human-controlled space. It was faint, broken, but the message was unmistakable. "We are not alone. The Ghost Fleet is coming." At first, Lothar thought it was a desperate plea from some forgotten human outpost, a last attempt at resistance. But as the transmission continued, he realized the gravity of the situation. The Ghost Fleet was a legend whispered among the highest ranks of the Empire, a fleet of human ships that had been thought destroyed, scattered, or lost to time. Ships that, according to the whispers, had been mysteriously reappearing across the galaxy, attacking key Empire strongholds in the dead of night, wreaking havoc with tactics that seemed impossibly advanced, even by the Empire's standards. The Ghost Fleet had become an enigma, a specter that haunted the Empire's nightmares. Now, it seemed they were real, and far more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. Lothar's fingers hovered over the controls, hesitating for just a moment. Could this be a trap? Could the humans be playing some game, luring them into a false sense of security? Or was this something far worse, something the Empire could not control? He gave the order to initiate a full-scale scan of the nearby systems. As his fleet of warships moved through the vast reaches of space, they encountered signs of the Ghost Fleet's previous raids, mysterious, scorched remnants of Empire outposts and ships reduced to debris. Each of these attacks had been swift, precise, and devastating. No Virok force had ever engaged with the Ghost Fleet, and lived to tell the tale. The deeper they ventured, the more evidence they found. Abandoned worlds, broken and burning, stripped of resources, and left in ruins. Entire sectors of the galaxy were now under the sway of this phantom fleet, and the Empire was powerless to stop it. Worse, the Virak could not predict where the Ghost Fleet would strike next. It was everywhere, yet nowhere. Then, without warning, a dark shape appeared on the edge of the fleet's sensors. A single human warship, sleek and ominous, emerged from the void, its hull adorned with the insignia of the old Earth military, a symbol thought long forgotten. The ship's design was both ancient and advanced, a hybrid of early human engineering and something far more sophisticated. The Ghost Fleet, it seemed, was not a ragtag group of survivors, but a highly organized force, led by someone, or something, determined to change the galaxy. "Admiral, they're hailing us," the communications officer reported, her voice trembling. "The transmission is coming through now." The words that followed echoed through the silent command deck. "This is the Reclaimer. You've been warned. Leave now or face the consequences." Lothar's blood ran cold. The Reclaimer. This was the name he had seen in the old records, the leader of the Ghost Fleet, a figure wrapped in mystery. He had assumed it was a myth, a ghost story designed to keep the soldiers of the Empire in line. Now he realized that the Reclaimer was real, and the power behind the Ghost Fleet was far greater than anything the Empire had ever encountered. The Admiral clenched his jaw, his mind calculating the situation. The Empire had never faced an enemy quite like this, an enemy that could strike from the shadows, disappear without a trace, and return with an unimaginable force. Lothar knew one thing for certain: the game had changed, and the Empire was no longer the hunter. It was the prey. The tension within the Empire's fleet reached a boiling point. Admiral Lothar paced the command deck, his mind calculating every move as the Empire's forces regrouped. The Reclaimer's message had left a mark, one of deep fear and uncertainty. This wasn't just a ghost fleet. It was an organized, formidable resistance, and it was clear now that the Empire was dealing with more than they had bargained for. The Empire's high command, however, was not one to back down. The reports of the Ghost Fleet's devastating raids had sparked a deep sense of outrage and determination in the Virak leadership. They had suffered setbacks before, but never anything like this. A meeting was called in the Empire's Central War Council, and every available general and strategist gathered to discuss their response. "We cannot let this defiance continue," High Commander Solon declared, his voice cold with anger. "The Ghost Fleet is a symbol of human resistance, and we cannot allow it to spread. We will eradicate it before it becomes a movement. If we strike hard enough, we can crush the humans' morale. They are a scattered force, uncoordinated. Until now." Lothar, despite his unease, stood firm. "Our intelligence confirms that the Ghost Fleet operates with more precision than we ever anticipated. The humans have adapted, and they are not as fractured as we thought. We will need more than brute force to defeat them." His warning was met with a curt nod from Solon. "Deploy the Black Star Battalion," the High Commander ordered, his tone final. "We will send the full force of the Empire. This will end, once and for all." The Black Star Battalion was the Empire's most elite division, a fleet of heavily armored dreadnoughts and warships, each equipped with devastating weaponry capable of annihilating entire cities. It was a force that had crushed countless rebellions, a tool designed to show the galaxy the Empire's overwhelming power. Within hours, the fleet was deployed. It thundered through the void, heading toward the human-controlled regions, intent on wiping out the Ghost Fleet and any remaining resistance. The message was clear. This was not just an attack. It was an execution. As the ships neared the coordinates of the Ghost Fleet, something unusual happened. Instead of encountering a scattered human force, they found themselves face to face with a new threat, a vast, impossible armada, more powerful and more numerous than anything the Empire had seen. The Ghost Fleet had been biding its time, And now it had come to a terrifying realization. The humans had not only survived, they had prepared. The Black Star Battalion opened fire, launching a relentless barrage of weapons that lit up the darkness of space. But the humans were ready. Ships from the Ghost Fleet wove through the barrage with impossible agility, their advanced technology allowing them to counter every move the Empire made. It was a battle of wits and will, with the Empire's overwhelming power slowly being chipped away by the sheer unpredictability and adaptability of the humans. Lothar watched in disbelief as one of the Empire's flagship dreadnoughts was caught in an unexpected trap. The humans used a feint, a fake retreat, designed to lure the fleet into a vulnerable position. The flagship, Varrock's Wrath, was surrounded by smaller human vessels that had seemingly appeared from nowhere. Their weapons cut through the flagship's shields with precision, disabling its primary engines and causing it to spin helplessly through the stars. The Empire's fleet scrambled to reposition, but the damage was done. The tide of battle had shifted. "Where are they coming from?" Lothar muttered, staring at the tactical display. He could not comprehend how the humans had managed to pull this off. Every time the Empire tried to gain an advantage, the Ghost Fleet countered with devastating effectiveness. Then the final blow fell. A massive energy pulse shot out from the heart of the human fleet, crashing into the heart of the Empire's forces. The pulse, powered by an unknown technology, disabled a third of the Black Star Battalion's ships in one fell swoop. The rest of the fleet was forced into retreat, their once proud armada now scattered and broken. Lothar's hands clenched around the armrests of his command chair. The battle was lost, and with it, the Empire's confidence. The Ghost Fleet had not only survived, they had exposed a crucial weakness in the Varrock's seemingly invincible strategy. The humans had turned their greatest asset against them, their unpredictability. The Varrock fleet limped back to the Empire's homeworld, battered and broken. The truth was clear now. The Empire's reign had never been as unshakable as they had believed. The humans were no longer a myth, no longer a nuisance. They were a force to be reckoned with. And as the first signs of revolt began to stir in the corners of the galaxy, the Varrock High Command understood the true scale of the threat. The humans had not only survived, they had ignited something far more dangerous than a rebellion. They had sparked the beginning of a revolution. In the wake of the devastating loss, the Empire retreated to its homeworld, shaken to its core. The once proud High Command, who had watched countless civilizations fall beneath their might, now faced a reality they had never anticipated. For the first time in millennia, they were not invincible. The Empire was vulnerable. Back on the distant human world, the Reclaimer stood before a holographic map, eyes steely with focus, a figure draped in the familiar insignia of the Ghost Fleet. The Reclaimer had become the symbol of humanity's resurgence. Their success in the recent battle was a turning point, a victory, but not yet the end. "We've won the battle, but the war is just beginning," the Reclaimer's voice rang out, steady and commanding. Their tone, filled with both determination and caution, echoed through the war room, where the leaders of the human resistance gathered. "The Varrock will not rest until we are crushed. We must strike while the iron is hot. But we need more than just raids. We need to bring the fight to them." The room was filled with murmurs as the commanders processed the Reclaimer's words. The fight had escalated far beyond anything humanity had anticipated. The Ghost Fleet had revealed its strength, but they still lacked the resources to mount a full-scale assault on the Empire's capital. The Varrock still held control over vast swaths of the galaxy. The path forward was unclear. But the Reclaimer's next words would change everything. "It's time to activate the Legacy Network," the Reclaimer declared, a hint of pride in their voice. "The Empire has underestimated us for too long. Now we will show them what humanity is capable of." The Legacy Network was the culmination of centuries of preparation, a decentralized, highly advanced system of communications and weapons technology buried deep within humanity's scattered colonies. It was a global web of knowledge and power, hidden from the Empire's prying eyes. A network created with one goal in mind: reclamation. In a series of carefully coordinated strikes, the Ghost Fleet began to deploy the first phase of the Legacy Network. It wasn't just about warfare. It was about destabilizing the Empire from within. Human operatives, trained in espionage and sabotage, infiltrated key Empire infrastructure, spreading disinformation and causing chaos within the ranks of Vyrok leadership. Cities on the Outer Rim, once under strict Vyrok control, erupted in riots as civilians, inspired by the idea of resistance, rose up against their rulers. Meanwhile, the Ghost Fleet continued its relentless attacks, their tactics evolving in real time as they learned from every encounter. They no longer just struck and retreated. They engaged in guerrilla warfare across the stars, striking swiftly, disappearing, and then reappearing in places the Vyrok could not predict. Every move seemed designed to provoke fear and confusion within the Empire. But it wasn't just about fighting battles in space. The humans knew that the key to victory lay in breaking the will of the Empire itself. In the Empire's vast capital city, where the Vyrok leadership watched over their crumbling empire, strange things began to happen. Political turmoil spread like wildfire as high-ranking officials, once loyal to the Empire, found themselves torn between their allegiance to the ruling class and the wave of insurrection sweeping through their territories. Some factions within the Vyrok saw the writing on the wall. They could no longer ignore the growing human influence. The first signs of division within the Empire's elite began to emerge. Rebel movements grew in power. Unlikely alliances formed between the Vyrok and human defectors, and what had once been a monolithic empire now found itself unraveling at the seams. On the battlefield, the Vyrok were still formidable, but they had lost their edge. Every time they attempted to strike back, the Ghost Fleet was already gone, leaving only destruction in their wake. There was no easy path forward for the Vyrok, no quick way to put an end to the rebellion. The humans had learned too much, adapted too quickly. Admiral Lothar, though shaken by the defeat, was still a soldier at heart. He knew that the Empire would not surrender so easily. The Vyrok would fight to the last breath. But the true question now was, would the humans allow them to? As the Empire's fleets regathered, pulling together what little strength they had left, the Reclaimer watched the stars burn brightly outside their command vessel. Humanity had done what no other species had been able to do. They had forced the Vyrok to fight a war on two fronts, not just in space, but on the very ground of their own empire. The Reclaimer turned, their eyes narrowing with a steely resolve. This is only the beginning. The Empire will fall. The galaxy will be ours. The Empire was beginning to fracture. In the vast, glittering cities of Vyrok Prime, the heart of the Empire, the once unshakable walls of the regime began to show signs of erosion. What had started as a quiet whisper of rebellion had blossomed into a full-scale revolution. The Vyrok military was still formidable, but the cracks in their unity were growing wider every day. The Reclaimer's campaign of psychological warfare, combined with the Ghost Fleet's relentless strikes, had taken a toll that even the Empire's most hardened generals could not deny. Admiral Lothar had been summoned to the High Command once more, but this time, the atmosphere was different. There was no room for bravado. The room was thick with tension as the Empire's most senior officials gathered, their eyes focused on the holographic map that displayed the current status of the war. "We are losing," Lothar said, his voice low, but firm. He had seen it for weeks, the Empire's military advantage slipping away. The once unbeatable war fleets were now crippled by the Ghost Fleet's guerrilla tactics. Planets that had long been under the Empire's rule were erupting into full-scale uprisings, and the discontent within the ranks of the Vyrok was becoming palpable. The humans have turned the tide. Our forces are spread too thin. High Commander Solan's face was twisted in a mixture of rage and desperation. This is an aberration, a temporary setback. We will crush them, as we always have. But Lothar could see the doubt in his eyes, the same doubt that had begun to spread through the ranks of the Vyrok. The Empire's once unshakable confidence was crumbling beneath the relentless onslaught of humanity's resourcefulness and resilience. The Virok were losing their grip on the galaxy, and there was no clear path forward. Solon slammed his fist against the table. "What do you propose, Admiral?" Lothar hesitated, then spoke with grim resolve. "We need a final push. We need to strike the heart of the human resistance, destroy the Reclaimer. If we remove their leader, we may be able to disrupt their entire operation." The High Command agreed, though the decision felt more like a desperate last hope than a strategic advantage. They would mobilize every available ship, every available resource, for one final assault on the heart of the Ghost Fleet, the Reclaimer's flagship. But unknown to the Empire, the humans had anticipated this move. Their network of spies had infiltrated the highest levels of the Empire. The Virok had underestimated the reach of the Reclaimer's influence, and now they were walking into a trap. The Ghost Fleet moved swiftly. The Reclaimer had left nothing to chance. They knew the Empire would try to strike decisively, and they had planned accordingly. The moment the Virok fleet moved to engage, they would find themselves surrounded. Lothar, in command of the Empire's flagship, Virok's Wrath, led the charge into the heart of the human territory. The plan was simple: strike fast, incapacitate the human forces, and capture or eliminate the Reclaimer. But as the fleet neared the coordinates, the reality of the situation hit. There were no human ships waiting in ambush, at least not in the way they had expected. Instead, what greeted the Empire was an eerie silence. The human ships appeared to be retreating, drawing the Virok fleet deeper into their trap. The first sign of trouble came when the Empire's sensors picked up a massive energy buildup. Before anyone could react, a barrage of energy blasts, far more powerful than anything the Virok had encountered, slammed into the flagship's shields, sending shockwaves through the entire vessel. "Report," Lothar shouted as the ship rocked violently. "We're surrounded, sir," his communications officer screamed. "There's nowhere to go." The Virok fleet had walked straight into the human trap. From every direction, human warships emerged from stealth fields, their weapons unleashing destruction. They had outmaneuvered the Empire once more, drawing the Virok fleet into a carefully orchestrated ambush. The human fleet wasn't retreating. It had been waiting for this moment. Lothar watched in horror as his fleet, outnumbered and overwhelmed, was torn apart. The Virok's Wrath was taking direct hits, and it wouldn't survive much longer. He ordered the retreat, but it was already too late. The Empire's most powerful flagship was crippled, and the human forces were closing in. In the midst of the chaos, the Reclaimer's voice echoed through the Empire's communication channels, cutting through the panic. "This is the Reclaimer. The time has come for your surrender. Your empire is broken. Your reign is over." Lothar felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He had never imagined the Empire could be so completely outplayed. The Virok had always prided themselves on their superiority, their technology, and their might. But now they had been forced to confront a truth they had long denied. Humanity had not only learned to survive, they had learned to win. The Empire's fleet was shattered, and Lothar knew that the Virok had no choice but to retreat. The battle for the galaxy was not over, but for the first time in history, humanity had proven that they could stand against the might of the Empire. And the Reclaimer's words echoed through the shattered remnants of the fleet. "This is your reckoning, Virok. We reclaimed the galaxy." The remnants of the Empire's fleet drifted through the void, broken and scattered. The Virok's Wrath had been reduced to a shell, and its once proud fleet lay in tatters, unable to recover from the calculated, decisive ambush that had shattered their resolve. Admiral Lothar, now commanding what was left of the retreating forces, could only watch as the stars seemed to mock him from the bridge of his dying ship. The Virok had been bested, humiliated in a way they could never have imagined. The galaxy was no longer theirs. On the edge of the battlefield, the Ghost Fleet hovered in orbit around a planet once ruled by the Empire, now a symbol of humanity's triumph. The Reclaimers stood before a holographic map of the galaxy, their face set with grim determination, knowing that the fight was not over. The Empire may have been on the retreat, but the seeds of chaos sown by their reign still festered throughout the galaxy. The scars left behind by the Virak would take time to heal. For the first time in centuries, the balance of power had shifted, and the path forward was uncertain. The Reclaimer turned toward the assembled leaders of the human resistance. Each one had fought, sacrificed, and bled for this moment. This victory against a foe once thought invincible. But even as they celebrated, they knew that the real work was just beginning. The galaxy was in turmoil. Old alliances had fractured, and a new order was required. "We have won the battle," the Reclaimers said, their voice steady but filled with an undercurrent of responsibility. But the war for the future of this galaxy has just begun. The Virak are gone for now, but there are other forces waiting to rise in their place. We cannot afford to grow complacent. A murmur of agreement ran through the room. The leaders of the resistance understood the magnitude of what lay ahead. The Ghost Fleet's victory over the Virak had ignited the flames of rebellion across the galaxy, but it had also fractured the old order. New power struggles were already taking shape, and humanity, though victorious, would have to contend with a fractured, unpredictable galaxy. The Reclaimers' eyes scanned the room, their gaze lingering on the faces of those who had fought beside them. "We need unity. The galaxy will not heal itself. We must rebuild, not just from the ashes of the Virak, but from the conflicts that will inevitably arise. We will need allies, and we will need a strong hand to guide us forward." The assembly was silent for a moment, the weight of the Reclaimers' words sinking in. Humanity had risen from the depths of despair to topple an empire that had once seemed indomitable, but the galaxy was vast, and the challenges ahead would be unlike anything they had faced before. "We will lead, but not with the iron fist of the Virak," the Reclaimer continued. "We will lead with the strength of our unity, the strength of every human world that has been awakened by our cause. This galaxy will no longer bow to one race, one empire, one tyrant. The future of this galaxy belongs to all of us." Across the galaxy, from the outer rim to the once dominant centers of Virak power, humans began to organize. The first steps of rebuilding began as colonies and warships that had once fought against each other began to form new alliances under the banner of the Reclaimer. Old enemies turned to new allies, and the chaos left by the Virak Empire provided a rare opportunity for a galaxy-wide reorganization. Yet even as hope spread, shadows remained. The Empire's collapse had triggered a wave of rebellion and conflict on a scale previously unseen. Rogue factions, former Virak warlords, and criminal syndicates began to seize power wherever they could, carving out their own territories in the void left behind by the Empire's fall. The Reclaimer knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The foundations of the new era were fragile, and it would take years to bring the galaxy into any semblance of stability. But the people were willing to fight. They had seen that the Empire could fall. They had seen that humanity could rise from the ashes and reclaim what had been stolen from them. And now, for the first time in 1,000 years, the Virak were no longer the masters of the galaxy. The Reclaimer stood at the center of a new hope, watching the first of many new ships rise from the shadows of the old empire. The first wave of a new, united force, a force that would rebuild, restore, and eventually reshape the galaxy into something entirely new. The Reclaimer's voice rang out one last time, reverberating across the comms to all the far-flung corners of humanity's reach. "Together, we will reclaim the stars."